Welcome to another episode of Live from Jacksonville. It has been a busy couple of weeks for me with the Clay County Fair in town. I got to go down to Universal and check out the new Epic Universe, which is amazing. Also, the Jumbo Shrimp and concerts are back in season. Let's talk about what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. At VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena, Kane Brown will be here on Friday, April 25th, and American Idol Season 3 winner Fantasia Barrino will be at the arena on Saturday, April 26th. The St. Augustine Amphitheater has Warren Zeiders on Saturday, April 19th, Travis Tritt on Thursday, April 24th, and Wilco on Wednesday, April 30th. TheAmp.com is their website for tickets. Coming to the Florida Theater, Moody Blues singer Justin Hayward on Monday, April 21st. America will be there on Wednesday, April 23rd. The Donna Summer Experience on Thursday, April 24th. And Amos Lee, Sunday, April 27th. Now, this Wednesday, there's a really great show coming to the Florida Theater called The McCartney Years. It is the ultimate tribute to Paul McCartney. And I got a chance to talk with Yuri Pool, the guy behind this band and tour.
I think we're a pretty okay band, you know?
Well, from all the video that I saw, you're a little better than a pretty okay band.
Well, I'll just say I'm okay, and then the rest is up for people to decide what they like about it, you know?
Yeah, so I did read that you had got a guitar at a very young age and started really getting into the Beatles, but John Lennon at first, right?
Yeah, it was definitely John that got me into the Beatles at first. But really, I mean, it was because I just thought that the word rhythm sounded really cool. And, you know, on the early albums, they were prints, you know, what they were playing on the tracks or on the record. And next to John, it's a rhythm guitar player. And I thought that sounded really cool. So I was like, yeah, that's what I want to be.
I kind of came to the Beatles a little late. When I was younger, I was more into kind of R&B music. But then I worked at a record store from the time I was 18 until I was about 25. And I really got an education, not just on the Beatles, but also Wings in particular, is who I fell in love with.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I kind of progressed from, you know, obviously John getting me into the Beatles, and then, you know, eventually into Paul, and then, you know, I performed in a bunch of Beatles productions back in England, because I'm originally from Europe, so, you know, I spent a lot of time there in my early years when I started making music. And, you know, eventually took it across the ocean. And but I've always been a big fan of Paul McCartney's solo career and, you know, more particularly Wings, you know, because I felt like that was a real band, you know. And they were pumping out a lot of records in the 70s. And, yeah, just really great music. And obviously, you know, our show, you know, there's still a wink to the Beatles as much as Paul did in the 70s during his tours. So in that respect, it's authentic in many ways.
It's really cool, though. Just like Wings, your wife performs with you kind of as the Linda McCartney character.
Yeah, not only that, she shares the same birthday as Linda McCartney, September 24th. So... And not to get on top of that, but our first child was actually born hours apart from when Paul and Linda had their first child, you know.
Wow.
Our daughter was born on August 27, and they had their first child August 28. So next level, a dedication, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of connection there, no doubt about it. Do you have certain songs that you really like playing live, or are they all like your favorites at the same time?
I mean, that kind of depends, I guess. You know, it depends on the day, the mood, or, you know, I mean, obviously, every song that we play, you know, as authentically as we can, you know. But, I mean, if I'm going to have to say a song, I would say it'd probably Call Me Back Again, which is a great song because it kind of... like it really shows off McCartney's voice, and it's such a deep song. It's maybe not one of the more popular ones, you know, that he wrote, like Live and Let Die or Band on the Run, even though it's not really a deep cut, personally speaking. But, you know, the song really just sort of like amplifies everything that he is. And the way we perform it in much of the same way that he did during the 70s, during his live tours. So it sort of pays tribute to him as a singer, but also a performer, and that really sort of like encompasses our entire show. The McCartney Years is a show that not only pays tribute to McCartney as, singer and songwriter, but also as a performer, which is something that we can do in a very authentic way as opposed to perhaps, a Beatles act, because as you know, the Beatles stopped touring after 1966. So all these bands have to sort of come up with a scenario in which the Beatles perform these songs live in order to perform them, right? That's something that we don't do. We don't have to do. We just look at what McCartney did during the 1970s, and we perform it note for note in exactly the same way that he did it. So, I'd like to say that the McCartney Years is a very authentic show that pays tribute to McCartney as a whole, as a singer, songwriter, as a performer, and sort of gives the audience a real good idea of what it was like to see McCartney in the 1970s, playing all those songs that he was doing at the time.
So authentic, in fact, that you guys use instruments the same make and model as the ones that Paul's band used back in the 70s, right?
Yeah. Everything that you see in our show is not a coincidence. And with that, I mean everything. Is that I've spent the last 17 years when I started the band. And by the way, we are the longest running production of Paul McCartney's music in the world today. But I've spent that time really researching everything that they toured with. So even if you look at the microphones and even the microphone stands and even the positions of where these are placed across the stage and how the amplifiers are being amplified with or picked up with the microphones and how everything is wired on stage, we're doing it in much of the same way that they did in the 1970s in order to really just sort of put extra credence to the authenticity of our show. And yes, we have many of the original instruments that they toured with. One of the instruments that is probably one of the rarer ones is that of a double-necked Ibanez guitar that my Denny Lane, as I will call him, Hayden, wonderful guy, performs. And some other instruments, some of the keyboards. We hardly use any digital instruments. Everything is analog in much of the same way that they did. And I think that's why we're in such good shape, because everything is so heavy and we have to set it up and tear it down every night.
And I know from being a music lover, and I'm a massive concert goer, it makes all the difference to hear those instruments versus, like you said, the digital stuff.
Well, the thing is, at the end of the day, people want to come for more than just the music, because if it was just about the music, they could have put on the record, at home.
Right.
So, our job really as performers, and especially performing this music, is to give everything, to not only perform the music, but to give the audience everything, the entire experience, to visualize the instruments that they were playing on. But not only that, we have all the original staging as well. I actually rebuilt Paul McCartney's entire set that they toured with in the 1970s to its original specifications, working very closely with some of the people that worked for and with McCartney during that time, some of the crew and whatnot, and technicians. So yeah, people really get immersed into the 1970s. The moment you walk into the theater is even before the show starts, you sort of get immersed into this arena-like 1970s experience, from the moment the doors open, really to the moments you walk out of the theater. And that's what we want to do. But I think, as musicians and artists, and especially as musicians performing the music of Paul McCartney, who, undoubtedly is one of the most successful singer-songwriters, performers of our time, is that you have to do it right, You just want to put in the entire package, everything in it. And that's why I spent my last 17 years working on, and I still am, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about some other stuff that I want to add to the show, because that's just part of what we do,
Yuri, I've been going to concerts since I was 18. That was 40 years ago. I hate to admit that. And I've seen just about everyone I've ever wanted to see live except Paul McCartney. And he was actually in Jacksonville for the Super Bowl when it was here, but I wasn't able to get tickets. So I'm looking forward to seeing this show, because I feel like I'm going to be checking something off my bucket list, seeing your show.
No, absolutely. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to have a wonderful time. And yeah, obviously, we would love to hear from you if you thought it was better than just okay. We'd love to hear from you.
I know from the videos that I've seen, it's going to be. I'm so excited. I read somewhere that you love that all generations come to this show, and I was reminded. I once saw Kiss. And there was like a granddad and his grandkids, and they were all in the Kiss makeup. And I love that families can go to these shows and experience the same music in a different way together.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we even see it on, like, when we post stuff on various platforms, we see a young generation, a new generation sort of getting caught by the music, really much in the same way that I was, because, I mean, I was born after the Beatles. I was born after Wings. I mean, I didn't know about any of Wings until the later years. I didn't know about the Beatles until my father pulled out the records, So it's great to see yet a new generation sort of get touched by that music all over again in much of the same way that I did. And I understand, and I totally support that. And I love seeing younger kids at our shows. And a lot of these kids obviously only have seen or only have heard the music from the radio or, online, and perhaps, video snippets left and right. So it's great for them to sort of experience how it was like back in the 70s, seeing a band performing that live the way it was done back then, So it sort of gives them, the feeling that they have experienced something from that era.
I made a list of my top 5 songs that I hope to hear at the McCartney Years show. Can I run them by you?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Hear all about it.
Because I love the Paul McCartney and Linda love story. Silly Love Songs is at the top of my list.
Yeah, we might just do that. Yeah.
To me, Live and Let Die is one of the greatest songs ever. And I feel like every time I hear Bohemian Rhapsody, I feel like they should acknowledge Live and Let Die, because without that, they wouldn't have the other.
Yeah, and the great thing about that song really was that obviously it was written, for the Bond movie at the time. And they just casually asked Paul, it's like, hey, we have this movie and it's called Live and Let Die. Do you want to write a song? And then, he just wrote a song to the title, which is just very impressive. It's certainly one of my favorites. And if you look at the way we're performing it, I won't say anything about it. You're just going to have to see it.
Okay. Number 3 on my list is Maybe I'm Amazed, going back to that whole love story. That song almost brings me to tears.
Yeah, great song. And actually, that song was meant for Abbey Road. It wasn't meant for McCartney 1. McCartney started writing that around the time that they were recording Abbey Road, but obviously, now we know the Beatles were no longer collaborating after Abbey Road anymore, so it ended up on his first album. I think it's a great song, and again, vocally and musically, it's just all Paul McCartney.
All right, the last 2 on my list are With a Little Luck and Listen to What the Man Said. I love Listen to What the Man Said. I think it's one of the most underappreciated songs.
Yeah, the fun thing about that song is that he performed it in 2 different ways. There's the album version of it, which is, obviously you can hear it was recorded in the studio, and then which is the live version that he did for Wings of America in '76. And honestly, I so much prefer that because it swings, like it really swings, the live version. So, and then obviously because we pay homage to McCartney's live touring years, people will get to enjoy that version. Love it. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to hear all those songs and more and get a little more education on Paul and Wings. The McCartney Years is coming to the Florida Theater on Wednesday, April 16th. Tickets are available at thefloridatheater.com. Yuri Pool, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, yeah, you're quite welcome. And, hey, if people want to know what it's like to be with the band on the run, they should definitely follow us. The McCartney Years on Facebook. They can find us on Instagram as well. And even TikTok, we post little videos on there. They can also go to the website, themccartneyyears.net, for any tickets in case some of the shows that you're looking at are sold out. And, we cannot wait for the concert. We're so much looking forward to to coming to Florida.
And we cannot wait to see you. Thank you again for your time. Immediately after my conversation with Yuri, I went to floridatheater.com and bought tickets to this show. I cannot wait to see this. Now, the Alhambra Dinner Theater has been a Jacksonville institution for nearly 60 years, and we're joined right now by owner Craig Smith, who I've known for several decades, as you'll hear when he came in to chat with us last week. We're joined right now by Craig Smith from Alhambra Theater and Dining. How are you?
I am good. Thanks so much for having me.
I feel embarrassed that I haven't asked you to be on the podcast until now. And I was telling Mark, who's here with you, I was focusing kind of mainly on music venues. And even though the Alhambra's been here forever, it didn't cross my mind to have you guys on. So welcome.
Do you realize how long forever is?
Well, I know that when I was in fourth grade, we went to see something.
We all went in fourth grade. We had to go to the Alhambra, and we had to go to the Nutcracker.
Yes, and also we had to go to St. Augustine to the Fountain of Youth.
Yes.
But I remember it was something that was a Julie Andrews film. It could have been Mary Poppins.
Probably Sound of Music.
Sound of Music.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were like in fourth grade. I went to Mayport Elementary. So we got in the bus and went to the theater. It was like, okay, this is kind of cool.
So you fourth grade, would that have been 79?
74.
So the reason I ask is the original. Okay, so growing up, everybody watched Beauty and the Beast, right? The original voice of Beauty and the Beast was played by a lady named Paige O'Hare, and Beauty and the Beast came out, I think, in 1984. Either in 79 or 74, Paige O'Hare was on stage at the Alhambra in Sound of Music.
Wow, I wonder if I saw her.
And that's what I'm wondering. And went on to be the voice of Belle.
That's amazing.
So they wrote a book on the 50-year history of the theater 8.5 years ago. And we had looked for her then, and she was an artist in Vegas doing really well.
That's amazing. So the theater opened, I believe, was it 67?
65.
65, the year I was born.
Yes.
So by the time I was there, like in fourth grade, I was only like 9 or 10 years old.
It actually opened December 15th. Yeah, 67. You're right. 65, they started construction or started the idea of wanting to do it.
Yeah.
What's so funny is there's a picture in a field that's on the wall in July of 67. They moved in December 15th. So imagine building that building and moving in from July to December.
Couldn't do that these days.
Today, it'd take that long just to get the permit.
I was about to say the same thing. You're right.
My gosh. So it's so amazing. But he had the idea. Ted Johnson had the idea in 65. Met a guy named Leon Simons out of North Carolina who was in the tuxedo business. And he and Ted Johnson partnered up, and they built it in 67, and it's been blowing and going ever since.
You mentioned Paige. Are there any other names that you can think of that at the time were nobody and they went on to be who?
And I won't remember his name, the guy who created Will and Grace.
Oh, okay. Wow.
He was at the Alhambra in the mid-'70s doing stage shows when he got the call to go to Hollywood and do his first sitcom, just one episode.
Mm-hmm, like a pilot?
But that's what got him to Hollywood.
That's amazing.
And he went on later in life. He created Will and Grace. So that's a pretty big name.
Heck yeah, that's huge.
How dinner theater came into being was, prior to Alan Alda and MASH, when your show ended, your paycheck ended.
Right.
It didn't go on.
There were no royalties
like
back then.
And Alan Alda's really the guy who kind of changed all that. And so dinner theater, they called it the dinner theater circuit. And there were a couple hundred of them around the country. They would write a show for Mickey Rooney. Mm-hmm. And it would kind of be your thing. And you would travel around to these 175 dinner theaters and do the same show on the circuit.
Okay.
If you were Morgan Fairchild, you had your show. Morgan Fairchild had been here. Obviously we had her 7-8 years ago, but they had her here in the 70s.
That's similar to what comics do now.
That's right.
Or even bands.
Yeah, exactly.
You put together a show and you go on tour.
And then you go on tour with it. But what they tell me, and of course we were too young to know, what they tell me is most of those shows were not the best written. But people came because they want to see the stars. Just like now when we do a star, and we haven't had one since COVID. When we do a star, what we realized is the women love to come see Loretta Swit, Barbara Eden, Cindy Williams. They love to come see the female stars and see how they aged out. When the boys come, they're not so interested.
That's funny.
But the women definitely sell better than the men. No ifs, ands, or buts, except for B.J. Honeycutt.
Okay.
We did On Golden Pond with him, and it was...
He's a manly man's man.
He is a manly man. And you know who he's married to? The gal that was in 3 or 4 of the Elvis. Now her hair's multicolored. She's 85 years old and a hoot.
I remember when I was at WAPE, you guys had, and now I'm forgetting the name, the guy that played Radar on MASH.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. So Jimbo Martin, who's the sweetest guy you'll ever meet in your life. We lost him to cancer 5 years ago. Jimbo's the greatest. I mean, very small, demure, the sweetest guy, and keep things tight and straight. And so some of the kids are backstage. They were making some noise. Jimbo comes back and gets in their tail and sends them away. You know, how dare you interrupt the show and be a nuisance to the act. At that moment, Gary Bergdorf, Radar O'Reilly, walks off stage, sees Jimbo there, and assumes it was him making the noise and tears into his behind.
Oh, my gosh.
And so to this day, till we lost him, but we still laugh about it, that Jimbo Martin got his butt chewed by Radar O'Reilly.
We also had Frank Gorshin was on our show, promoting a show here. That was the Riddler from Batman.
That was way back. And what they tell me about Frank was after the shows, obviously this is before I owned the place, but they said after the book show, he would come out and sit down and do a little comic shtick, right? Do his comedian show. And what Ham Waddell told me, who was the 30-something-year set designer, he did that so that he could interact with guests in the building.
Okay.
And then maybe find some folks to go out with to have drinks that night.
I remember when he came into our studio, he was very adamant that he would only talk about the show at the Alhambra, do not bring up the Riddler, or he would walk out of the studio. We were like, what? We've got the Riddler in here? We can't even bring up the Riddler? But he was very adamant, and none of us did.
Isn't that funny?
We were very respectful.
You know, back then I'd have figured Hoyle would have done it just to be a pain in the butt.
I know, right? But none of us did. I think we were all just kind of, the rest of us outside of Hoyle, we were in our 20s. So we were like kind of nervous, like we don't want to piss off anybody. It was fun, though.
Particularly Mark Schwartz.
Exactly. Yeah, our GM was the guy. Let's fast forward to today, because I was just on the website checking out what you have coming for the rest of the year, and you guys are stacked.
We are. We're so lucky. We had a great season. It's selling really well. We just did West Side Story, our PR guru and my dear friend, and without him I wouldn't be where I am, for 5 or 6 years. Let's do West Side Story. Let's do West Side Story. Spielberg did it 2 years ago, remade it. One of our cast members, Sky Maddox, who did 7 Brides for 7 Brothers for us the first year I owned the theater, she's gone on to be a huge Broadway dance star, huge. And now she's doing clinics, and people come to learn to dance from her. Her grandfather was in the original movie, 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. She was one of the dancers in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story.
That's so cool.
So he's been on me, love it, love it, love it, you know, helpless romantic. And so I didn't want to do it. And I said, okay, we'll do it. We opened the show 90% sold out.
Wow.
So, of course, I told you so a lot. But I noticed he's not made a pick this year, right?
Okay.
So, but I'm glad we did it, and people really loved it.
It's funny, on the last episode of the podcast, I interviewed a guy named Connor Gallagher, who was a choreographer for a show coming up at the FSCG Artist Series Broadway shows, and he said the one show he would never choreograph is West Side Story, because it was his favorite when he was a boy. It's what made him want to dance.
Yep.
And so that's such it's
quintessential piece.
Yeah, it's on a pedestal.
Yeah.
It's an amazing show. Beautiful. The Carole King musical is running now.
So I can tell you this. Again, we're same age or similar. I didn't realize how many songs Carole King touched that I had no clue. Mm-hmm. It is, the music of the show is probably the most that you'll ever see on our stage, that you'll pat and sing and clap. You know, so many of the movies that have been made, like, you know, Sister Act, it's not any of the songs that we knew or loved. So many of the shows, when they bring them to stage, they put new music to them. Right? Because of the rights and the pay and all that stuff. Well, obviously, Carole King Beautiful is a story about her life, so it's the music that you know and love.
You're right. She wrote so many hits for so many people.
And so everybody who's been to rehearsal, and I normally don't go to rehearsal until dress rehearsal the night of, But everybody who's been has said it was amazing. The Everly Brothers. So obviously within the show, we have all, little bands like the bands that she wrote music for. Mm-hmm. And so they said they're all amazing.
By the way, I worked in a record store. Remember Turtles Records and Tapes?
Yeah, I remember Turtles.
Like all through the 80s before I got into radio. So I had that education of Carole King and what she had done because music is my life. And so I have seen that play before this show. And you're right. The entire thing is just a walk down memory lane, no matter what age you are, because these songs are so timeless.
Quick side note, I grew up on the West Side. My dad was a Navy chief. We didn't have a whole lot of money just to pee away. Mm-hmm. So I went to Turtles to listen to the music I want to listen to because I couldn't spend the $8 to buy one.
That was smart. And I got a job. Actually, I was a manager at Publix, but I got a job part-time at Turtles so I could just buy music with my spare money. It's exactly what I did. So that Carole King musical runs through May 11th. And then you have a one-night-only show. Is this sold out, the Everly Brothers?
Oh, yeah, Everly Brothers
okay.
sold out within hours.
Then I'm not going to talk about it.
No.
But the Everly Brothers experience is coming.
You can come
really,
to Carole
really
King and see some Everly Brothers songs, though.
There you go. Absolutely. May 15th through June 22nd, My Fair Lady. Talk about another
get
classic.
Married in the morning.
It's a good thing you just run the place.
Yes. My daughter told me, Mary Berry and I did a charity show one night. I was Fred Mertz. She was Lucille Ball. Mary, if you listen to this, don't laugh too hard. And so Mary was amazing. I mean, she was like Lucille Ball. She was so perfect. I, on the other hand, my daughter comes into me the next morning. She's 11 years old, and she grabs my arm, and she says, Daddy, you may want to stick to owning the theater and let the actors stick to the acting.
I was in a Dancing with the Stars competition against her, and she came in first, and I came in third, and I was like,
Well, listen, I've seen you you're pretty fleet of foot yourself.
I was.
I can't believe you didn't win.
I did. The third year I won, but it took me a while to get there. My Fair Lady, that's going to be a great show. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, June 26th through August 17th.
You got to tell people, Willy Wonka. A lot of people are like, what's Charlie? It's Willy Wonka.
Yeah, but come on. Timothy Chalamet really brought that character back to a younger audience.
Yes, absolutely.
And is this the musical based on that movie?
Yes.
Okay, so people should know the music.
Yeah. Again, like always, they always like to make some adjustments, but they'll love it. It's going to be such an immersive experience. You're going to walk into Candyland, and then you'll walk into the candy factory, and it'll be very immersive. You'll really feel like you're there.
You know what? I'm going to put a star by this one because this is one I definitely want to see. I never saw that movie for some reason, and I'm a movie goer. So I'm looking forward to that.
Only at the theater, though.
Only at the
you
theater.
Used to say, you're a moviegoer at the theater.
Yeah, at the theater. Oh, yeah. I don't do all that streaming and stuff. So Come From Away is coming August 28th through October 5th. I've never seen this play, and we were talking about our friend Eden Kendall. This is one of her all-time favorite plays. Tell me about this show.
So, obviously, we all remember 9/11 and how awful it was. Well, what you don't realize is planes were all over the globe, and they had to land, right? All over the country. They had to land. Well, there was tons of flights on their way out of the country headed, and they made them land too. And they all land in Newfoundland. And I don't remember if it was 30 planes or 60 planes, but it was a lot of planes in a town that had, one bar and no hotel.
Right.
And so the community came together and literally came to the airport and started picking families up and taking them home, for a slumber party.
First of all, this is a cool idea for a movie, but this really happened.
In real life, it really happened, right? I mean, I could see Frank Gorshin fitting in great there, but that's a whole nother story. And so the story is about the community coming together, and it's just about the best in humanity. On the worst day of human tragedy maybe ever in our country, you had this group of folks from Newfoundland that came together and attempted to make better 1,000 people's lives, or maybe it was 3,000 people's lives.
Have you seen this show yet?
I saw it on Broadway.
On Broadway, okay.
Oh, yeah. It's a great show, great timing, very simple set, music, all original music, and it is spectacular.
I'm really, really looking forward to that one, too. Again, that's Come From Away August 28th through October 5th. The Mystery of Edwin Drood. I'm gonna admit something. I have no idea what that is.
Okay, you get a mulligan, because a year ago today, I probably didn't either.
Okay.
Charles Dickens writing The Mystery of Edwin Drood, and he dies, right? Before he ever finishes.
What?
Charles Dickens dies, so the show's not finished. So you remember the last time you were at the theater was a charitable, we did something for charities.
Yeah.
So we'll announce here on your podcast, Edwin Drood's going to be similar. We're going to pick charities, and people can come make a donation to their charity through us, and you're going to get to vote on how the show ends.
What?
So the show is never finished.
I've never heard of that before.
Live band, so the band's an integral part of the show. It's a live music show, which are always my favorite. And so we're excited about that. And so we'll collect everybody. It's almost like a Clue, that you never know how it's going to end. So.
That's amazing. I'm stoked by that. I'm super excited about that one. All right, and you're going to round out the year with just a classic, Elf the Musical, November 20th through Christmas Eve.
Okay, you ready for this? So we're sitting on April Fool's Day, right? Which I should have pranked you. God, I can't believe I didn't. You've done. Hey, should we talk about the Super Bowl?
Let's not. Because we got in so much trouble for that.
That was the best. If you don't remember, Amadeus told the entire world the Super Bowl was not coming to Jacksonville on April Fool's Day. And I thought it was the funniest thing ever done. But I remember Mike Kelly didn't think it was
still we got in so much trouble.
Him and Wayne Weaver.
You know what happened? Someone from Jacksonville knew an NFL referee that lived in California, called them at like 6 in the morning, our time, so it must have been like 3 in the morning. This guy in California gets up and starts calling everyone all over the country. Within an hour, everyone in the country knew the Super Bowl was not coming to Jacksonville. They moved it to New York, and but we wouldn't back down. Mark Schwartz was gone, I believe, by then. Whoever our GM was came in and said, "You got to stop." We're like, "We're not stopping. This is April Fool's Day.
Oh yeah,
we're taking this to the end."
And it was the best ever. Bro, you got to read the press release. If you've never heard the shtick, you got to read the press.
Yeah, we made ESPN.
Oh, they literally said the Super Bowl's been canceled in Jacksonville. They're moving it to New York because. It was the best. So Mark, a couple of years ago, he puts out on April Fool's, maybe 6-7 years ago, Brad Pitt was coming to be a guest star in one of our shows.
Smart.
Well, it was real smart and funny until we had to give all the money back the next day when we said April Fool's Day.
Nice. Well, okay, so let's talk about Elf, the musical.
Real quick, April 1st, Elf is 70% sold.
Oh,
in
already?
April.
Wow.
In April. So so if you listen to this in May, you might not get a seat. And I'm being a little facetious. We'll have some, but literally we're 70% sold on April Fool's Day. We've done it. This will be our third time.
It's such a great show.
Such a great show. The cast has been amazing both times we've done it. We're so fortunate to get the level of talent that we get here. Typically the leads we all bring in from New York or Disney. We bring a lot of kids from Disney. And then we have this amazing local group that most of them were equity, and now they've retired and they live here. And so real talented people that have been all over the world and been on Broadway, and they happen to live in Jacksonville, Florida. So we get a talent pool that very few, which is probably the reason we've been around 59 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's locally sourced.
Yeah, and so we're very fortunate. Elf will be an amazing show, and it'll be a sold-out show.
Do you guys normally run it through Christmas Eve?
Always Christmas Eve.
Is that packed?
Oh my gosh, 100%, everything. So this year, the way it worked was Christmas was Wednesday?
I think it was.
Christmas was Wednesday. So we had 2 shows Saturday, 2 shows Sunday. We're normally dark on Monday, but when we keep them over for another week, we have to pay them for the full week, right? Whether they do 1 show or 8 shows. So we go to them and say, hey, we'll give you a little extra. And so we did 2 shows Saturday, 2 shows Sunday, 2 shows Monday, 2 shows Tuesday, and 2 shows Tuesday. And then Wednesday was Christmas.
Wow.
So we did 8 shows in a row with no break, and everybody loved it. The kids, nobody minded. Most of them are young, unless we put Ken in Becky Ubel, our 30-year box office, her husband does some shows with us. And he's one of our most seasoned veteran actors. And so even he could keep up. So
that's awesome. That is so cool. Well, now you know what's coming to the Alhambra for the rest of this year. And now you know it's April 1st when we recorded this, and Elf is 70% sold out.
Sold out.
So get to your phone or your whatever and buy some tickets. AlhambraJacks.com is the website, and all the shows are there. Tickets for all of them are now available.
It's such a... I drive to work and I chuckle and I say, golly, this is what I do. It's the most fun you could ever have in your life. We're not in the theater business. We're in the business of memory, right?
You know Stephanie Lynn from Daly's Place?
Yeah, I don't know her well, but I know who she is.
I had her on recently, and she said the same thing about her job. I feel the same way about my job. I don't even feel like I'm working. I left Publix when I was about 30, which was work, to get into this full time. And I feel like I've been on vacation since then.
My grandfather used to say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I don't feel like – now, yesterday when we were renovating our new Dick's Wings, I felt like I was working. but that was only a one-day event.
And I do have days because I'm also a promotions director where we work. Like I was here Sunday working in my garage for 6 hours, sweating, getting things ready for spring. You have days, but, man, we're so lucky. We're so blessed.
So blessed. They're just beyond.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for coming in here. I definitely want to get with you on when these artists start coming to town for these shows. I'd like to have them on the podcast to talk about the show maybe a week or so out.
Yeah, love to.
Awesome.
They'd love it too. Listen, who doesn't love a microphone, right?
Exactly. Oh, and now that you've mentioned Dick's Wings, can we let everyone know that?
Yes, absolutely. We the theater bought Dick's Wings at Atlantic and St. John's Bluff, right across from, drum roll, Craig Field.
Look, it's all tied in with another Craig.
All tied in right there. So we're right across. We're literally, today's April Fool's Day. We started Sunday. We'll finish hopefully tomorrow. And we're doing a big renovation, and it's going to be all nice and new. And the thing that I tell people, they laugh, we have great fried shrimp. Like, don't come get wings. Come get fried shrimp
good
and
to
wings.
know. Good to know.
They are amazing.
And now we have a new place to go watch the Jags games.
And now we have a new place and maybe a new home. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But yes, it's thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Of course, I've loved watching you over the years from a young buck. And those of you remember when you used to do the CW stuff on the weekends, we did one of those together forever ago. And if you can't tell it, if you've never had the chance to meet him, just a wonderful guy. And it's been fun to watch his career over the last 30 years.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
I don't know about you, but I still got a lot of stuff to pay for. So let's keep going.
Me too. Absolutely. Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. I know this was a really long show, but I had so much fun. I hope you did too. I'll be back with another episode soon to let you know what's happening live from Jacksonville.